your friends, the people that you're trying to impress, the people that you know out there that you would love to see you in this beautiful home that you can show off, at the end of the day, those friends aren't going to be there when it's time for you to retire. Right? They're not going to be chipping in and starting your GoFundMe when it's time for you to finally hang it up. If you're not making these wise financial decisions now, it could hinder or hurt you down the road, right? And you could be waiting for a day or waiting for a moment that may never get here. And so you have to ask yourself, what am I trying to accomplish with this home purchase? Welcome to the Home Goals Podcast, the ultimate guide for turning your home goals into a reality. I'm your host, Derek Thornton. Join us as we navigate the twists and turns of obtaining a home. We'll be offering expert tips, helping you avoid pitfalls, and championing your journey towards that cherished place to call home. In this week's episode, we will be discussing the mindset that revolves around this whole notion of keeping up with the Joneses. Right. When you're trying to put on airs or put on appearances and kind of live outside of your wages or impress people in other ways. I always think of the quote, I feel like Dave Ramsey kind of made it popular, but I've heard it in other places as well. But the quote that always goes, you're buying things you don't need with money you don't have to impress people you don't even really like. And that is something that I see start to creep into not only other areas of our lives, whether it's buying a car or buying fancy clothes or shoes or anything else, but especially when it comes into the home buying process. There have been several instances over the years that I've run into where there were people who had everything lined up. They had all the things that they needed in order to make that home purchase. They were all set to go. And when they went to make that purchase, they found out, you know what? The houses that are available or the houses that we would like don't really line up with the appearance that we would like to portray to our friends and to other people that we interact with on a regular basis, right? They could afford to buy a house, but it wasn't a house that they necessarily felt proud of or felt like it was something that they could show off to other people. And for that reason, instead of purchasing, they would sit on the sidelines and just wait for something else to come available. And unfortunately for a lot of them, that day still hasn't come. And so I wanted to speak to just kind of the mindset that goes behind that in things that you really should keep in mind. We are definitely living in times where affordability is at an all-time low. There's a lot of people who are waiting and kind of hoping that we start to see more of a decline in prices. And that's something that remains yet to be seen. And so you might have to be in a situation or you might have to consider options that maybe aren't the ones that you would want to do originally, right? You may have to make those compromises or those settlements. And I'm not saying that you need to go out and buy the dump or the fixer-upper or the thing that you're just going to be pumping money into to change, but it may mean that you buy a house or buy a property that isn't necessarily something that you can show off or that you feel like you can show off on HGTV or on your Instagram reels and all those things. And that's okay. I want to let you know that that is something that is all right. You can still find a way to make things happen. And so we're going to talk a little bit about just the opportunity cost of making those decisions, right? If you're on the fence, if you feel like you have everything ready, but the houses that are out there, the houses that are available just don't quite line up to the standard that you originally wanted, I'm going to help you kind of talk through things to help you figure out if that's a good decision that you want to make or if you kind of want to hold off and see what else comes available. Again, the interest rates are kind of starting to level out. We might see them go a little bit lower, but the likelihood of them getting in the 2s or the 3s ever again, that's highly unlikely if that does happen. And if it even does, again, you're going to be dealing with a massive amount of competition and feeding frenzies and bidding wars all over again, right? And so that may even have the adverse effect that you would want it to in some moments. But then also, the inventory levels have been so low and have struggled to rise up. There's a lot of sellers out there who are staying put in their house because they don't want to give up on their low rate. There's builders who are struggling to keep up with the demand or build options that are affordable, right? The pricing of everything, the price of land, everything has gone up. And so it's difficult for them to even build properties or options that are affordable to the average person. And so for those reasons, it's unlikely that we're going to see massive drops in home values anytime in the near future, especially nothing compared to what we saw in '08 with the housing crash. And so again, that's something that we just need to start changing in people's mindsets, that the fancy house that you might have envisioned or might have thought of obtaining, you may need to change that a little bit and say, hey, we might want to push that goal a little bit farther down the road and go ahead and get something that makes sense for us now. And so I just wanted to play a little game, just kind of go through and figure out, okay, what options work best? What's something that can help you in the process, right? So let's say if you were in Raleigh and you were renting a house for, let's say, $2,100 a month, right? Pretty nice house, likely has some updates. It might even be an apartment or something as well, where you're having to utilize or able to utilize a lot of those amenities and things that different apartments offer. And so it's a pretty sweet setup for you. But $2,100, you can definitely get something that is comfortable and that offers all the things that you need in this area. And now we have to figure out, okay, if I were to apply that to a mortgage, what type of property could that get me? And what is the trade-off that I'm getting for pushing that decision further on down the road? So when it comes to rentals, as we all know, most rentals, whether you're staying in an apartment or you're with a traditional landlord, unless you have some type of special situation set up where that landlord has agreed to keep your rent at the same rate the whole time, or you live in a rent controlled place, more times than not, you're going to see that rent raise every single year, right? And so it's usually between national averages are somewhere around 3 to 5% that raises every single year, that rent is going to raise. 3%, well, let's go with that because it's a lower number, it's a little more conservative. But let's just say, for the sake of this example, your rent is going to raise 3% on that $2,100 every single. So that's around maybe $67 or so that your rent is going to raise every single year. And for this example, the average person stays in their house before they move on for about 5 to 7 years. So let's just pretend like you're staying in this rental for $2,100 for 5 years. And we're just going to compare the numbers to figure out, okay, what is the opportunity cost of you not moving forward with the house that may not have all the bells and whistles and the fancy things that you want, right? So let's say you're staying in that rental over the course of 5 years. $2,100 is the starting rent. If it raises gradually by that $67 every single year, you're looking at about $83,000, $85,000 all told at the end of 5 years that you have paid in rent. Now, again, with rent, I hate to say that you're throwing your money away. A lot of realtors will use that terminology. I'm not saying that you're throwing the money away, because you are getting some benefits by renting, one of which is that you don't have to worry about repairs. You don't have to worry about upkeep or any of those things. You just have a place that you get to live consistently, right? So it's not a complete waste, but it is money that isn't impacting or affecting in a positive way your savings at all, right? That is money that is going directly to that landlord, directly to that company or complex every single month, right? So if we look up at the end of 5 years, you will have spent well over $80,000 in that scenario that is gone, right? There's nothing you get for that. You don't get any incentives or any rewards, any tax breaks. You don't get anything for that, right? That money is just gone out there, and that is the price that you pay for having a place to live that you're not having to worry about any changes, right? So that's the cost of that. Now, let's say we took that money or took those resources and put it towards purchasing a home. You could likely get a house with today's interest rates, and when you factor in homeowners insurance and taxes and all the other things that are included as well, all told, you could probably find a house around the $250,000 to $255,000 range in this area and be able to still kind of stay within those numbers based on some of our average interest rates, right? You might have to give or take a little bit, but let's just go with that for the sake of this story. So I looked up and I found a random townhouse that was listed for sale in Raleigh. That was listed for $255. The HOA dues and everything were about $190, so that's a little bit higher. But again, it's a townhouse, so you have the added benefit of not having to worry as much about the exterior repairs. But let's say, for example, you purchased that home at $255 right now, and you stayed in there for 5 years. So if we look over the course of that 5 years, there's two factors that are working to your advantage. One, every single month that you make a mortgage payment, a portion of that is going towards the principal, which is reducing your overall mortgage amount, right? So it's almost like a forced savings plan in a sense. And then also on top of that, you also have the home's value gradually growing as well, right? So those two things, right? The paying down of the mortgage and the value of the home going up, those two things are help building what's called your equity in the home, right? That's the money that is essentially the value that you have in the home, right? Your equity is whatever the home is worth minus whatever you owe on the mortgage, right? So if you have a home that's worth $300,000 and you owe, or you still have a mortgage for a balance of $250,000, that means you have $50,000 of equity, right? And so if you were to sell that home, you would theoretically make that amount less any fees or expenses. And so that's how you want to look at it, right? There's two different things working in your advantage. One, you're paying down the mortgage, and the value of the home is going up. Those two things help to build your equity in the home, and building equity is the number one advantage to home ownership. And so that's definitely something that you want to pay attention to and track to see how this advantage or this situation is helping you out, right? And so let's say, for example, you had, I don't know, maybe a 5% down payment on the home. You purchased it at that price point. And if we looked at a average amortization calculator, right? So that's just determining how much money is going towards paying down your principal and how much money is going towards interest, right? Because whenever you have a mortgage, the bank is going to want their portion, right? And in the earlier years of that mortgage, the interest portion of your payment is going to be a lot higher because they know even though you have a 30-year or 15-year mortgage, it's unlikely you're going to stay in the home that long, and they want to make sure they get their money first, right? And so they're going to charge you a higher amount of interest in those first initial years. And so the majority of your mortgage payment is going to be going towards mortgage interest, and a smaller portion will be going towards paying down the balance on that mortgage. Another thing I want to point out as well, a lot of times you hear people talk about a fixed rate mortgage, and one of the advantages to having a mortgage is that you don't have to worry about the payments ever changing. That is true partially, right? So the way the mortgage payments are set up, you have principal and interest, right? Those are things that are just the same. If you have a fixed rate mortgage, those things remain the same throughout the life of the loan. But then in addition to that, you also have a portion that goes towards taxes, property taxes, and then you also have a portion that goes towards homeowners insurance, right? And so those four things make up most mortgage payments that you have. And that's not even including HOA dues. But those four main ones, the principal, the interest, the property taxes, and the homeowners insurance, those four main parts, those are the four areas that your mortgage payment is going towards every single month, right? So it's being split up into four different areas or four different buckets in this analogy or so, and each portion goes towards those different areas. The only one that you really care about the most is the principal one, because that's the one that's paying down your mortgage. That one is, like I said, a smaller amount in those initial years, but it's important to keep in mind that taxes and insurance, those things are liable to change based on the market, right? So in our area, we just had our properties all reassessed, and so our taxes went up. That cost is going to change our monthly payment. Same thing with homeowners insurance, right? If there's changes in the homeowners rates, that can also change your payment as well. And so just because you have a fixed rate mortgage, that doesn't automatically mean that your payment is going to stay the exact same throughout the entire life of the loan. That just means the principal and interest, right? So those two portions will stay the same, but everything else is a little bit different. Just wanted to talk about that because I do think there's confusion into how that all works. But again, going back to that example, if you're paying that mortgage payment every single month, and I looked over maybe 5 years, the amount that has gone towards the principal or paying down that mortgage balance would be around, maybe in this example with today's interest rates, around $15,000, right? Let's just call that at an even number, just to make it easy. And then on top of that, the average home is also going to be appreciating in value. So let's say for 3%, right, is an average number, right? That's a good conservative number to kind of do it. Now, granted, you're going to have some years where it may be a little down, some years where it's way up. I don't think that we'll see anything like what we saw in 2021 and 22 happening again, but those things just give you a little feeler into how the market is moving. So let's say, for example, this particular house was appreciating in value 3% every single year. When you combine that with the amount that you're paying down the mortgage at the end of 5 years, you'd be looking at about maybe $55,000 plus in equity in that home. Now, you do have the added advantage with renting of having the landlord handle all repairs or issues or maintenance or upkeep with the property. We know that's not the case when you own your own home, and so let's factor that in as well. I usually recommend that people set aside about 1% of the home's value every single year for ongoing maintenance and things that happen. Some years you may have nothing, some years you may have a few things go wrong, but let's say we took out, I don't know, maybe 13, 14 grand or so for just upkeep and maintenance of that property. Even then, you're still over 40 grand in equity based on those other factors. That's the opportunity cost that you have at play. And so when you look at those numbers and you start to see the changes that it can make to your life and your situation financially, you have to ask yourself, okay, what am I trying to accomplish here, right? I know that this house may not be everything that I wanted. It may not be as large as I wanted. It may not have all the features or the nice layouts, but long term, if I were to make that decision now, that could have a far greater impact on my life and my financial stability and everything else, right? Your friends, the people that you're trying to impress, the people that you know out there that you would love to see you in this beautiful home that you can show off, at the end of the day, those friends aren't going to be there when it's time for you to retire. Right? They're not going to be chipping in and starting your GoFundMe when it's time for you to finally hang it up. If you're not making these wise financial decisions now, it could hinder or hurt you down the road, right? And you could be waiting for a day or waiting for a moment that may never get here. And so you have to ask yourself, what am I trying to accomplish with this home purchase? When you, if you have kids, right, you want to leave an inheritance for those kids. That would be ideal. That's something that I definitely want to do. And again, you have to ask yourself, right, if I push this decision further on down the road, or if I try to wait longer than I need to because I'm trying to show off to other people, am I hindering or hurting the inheritance that I could possibly leave behind for my kids? Again, these are all questions that you need to be asking yourself when you're trying to determine whether or not that house could be the right fit for you. You don't need to worry about making anybody else out there proud or envious or happy about your situation. You need to do what is best for you and your household, right? Don't worry about what other people are saying. Don't worry about what they may be thinking. Again, you don't want to look down years down the road and realize that you lost out on thousands and thousands of dollars, or you made decisions that really put you in a bind simply for the fact that you wanted to be able to show off, or you wanted to be able to have something that other people were jealous of. You don't need to worry about that, right? You need to worry about doing what is best for you, and it's going to set you up in the best position possible. Don't worry about what other people are saying. Don't worry about their doing. And again, the house doesn't dictate what you can do as a person. I hate to get a little preachy here, but even if you're a Christian, I would especially urge you to think long and hard about what you're trying to accomplish with the home that you purchase. I know tons of people who have these immaculate, really nice kitchens, and they never cook meals for anyone. Right? I know people who have massive houses, but they never let anyone stay with them. Right. And so what, again, are you trying to accomplish with this house that you want to purchase? Right. Is it just to show off? Is it just to be flashy? Is it just to be vain? Or is it really to make a difference in your community. One thing that I always loved and respected about my parents, we grew up, we definitely weren't poor, but we definitely weren't rich either. We were very much middle class and stuff, and we didn't have a ton of space, but we did always have using an extra room or an extra area in our home. And I can think of several occasions where people lived with us over the years. I can think of times where we had people over for dinner and stuff like that. We were always using our home to help others, right? And so again, if your goal is to get that nice house or to get that fancy place that you can really show off, what is the ultimate goal, right? Are you really trying to help your fellow man, help the people around you, or is it just to help your own selfish purposes as well? And so those are things that we all need to keep in mind. Again, don't allow what others think or what others may say to dictate the way that you operate your life, because I guarantee you that is a recipe for you being miserable and you setting yourself up in a position where you have a ton of regret later on down the road. And so, again, I don't want to be all doom and gloom and really fussing and preaching in all this episode, but I do want to really drive home the fact that you don't need to be concerned about what anybody else is doing. Just do what works best for you and you'll be fine. Have a wonderful day, everyone, and I'll talk to you next week.